I left my resume on a greasy diner counter at 2 a.m. 3 hours later, a blocked number called me. "Is this yours?" the voice asked. Deep, calm, dangerous. Before I could answer, he said, "Pack light, you have 30 minutes." I thought it was a prank, maybe a recruiter with terrible boundaries. But then I heard it, the sound that doesn't belong in a small town snowstorm. Helicopter blades. I pulled back the motel curtain, and there it was, black, sleek, cutting through the blizzard like it owned the sky. The door opened and a man stepped out. Expensive coat, silver hair slicked back, eyes that had seen empires rise and fall. He walked straight to my door. No knock. He just stood there, waiting. When I opened it, the cold hit me first, then his words. "My name is August Covington. I'm your grandfather, and the people who destroyed your mother, tonight we start destroying them back." I didn't know my grandfather. I didn't even know he existed. My mother never spoke about her family. She died when I was 19, broke and bitter, refusing to tell me where we came from. I grew up thinking we were nobody, that we had nothing, that I had to claw my way up alone. But standing in front of me was a man who looked like he could buy entire cities. And he was looking at me like I was the last piece of a puzzle he'd been waiting decades to complete. "You left your resume in a diner," he said, holding it up. "You listed skills they taught you to undervalue. You wrote a name they gave you to keep you small." He stepped closer. "That ends tonight. Get in the helicopter, Zoe. It's time you learned who you really are." I should have said no, but I didn't. The helicopter lifted before I even buckled in. No introduction, no explanation, just the violent hum of the blades and the old man sitting across from me, staring like he was cataloging every feature of my face. I shouted over the noise, "Where are we going?" "Somewhere they can't touch you yet," he said. "Who's they?" His jaw tightened. "The people who erased your bloodline, the people who convinced your mother she was worthless, the people who made sure you'd never know what you were owed." I felt my stomach drop, and it wasn't from the altitude. "I don't understand." "You will." The flight lasted 40 minutes. We landed on a private airstrip outside a compound I couldn't even process. Stone gates, security everywhere. A mansion that looked like it had been ripped out of European aristocracy and rebuilt in the mountains. Inside, the walls were covered in portraits. Old men in military uniforms, women dripping in jewelry, children dressed like royalty. And then I saw her, my mother, younger, radiant, wearing a gown I'd never seen her in, standing beside a man in a tuxedo who looked nothing like my father. "That was taken at her debutante ball," August said quietly. "She was 18, the youngest Covington heiress in 3 generations. I felt the air leave my lungs. "Covington," I repeated, as in the family that owns half the pharmaceutical patents in North America, as in the family that sits on the boards of 16 Fortune 500 companies, as in the empire your mother walked away from when she fell in love with the wrong man." My hands were shaking. "She never told me." "She was protecting you," he said. "But protection has limits, and 3 months ago those limits ran out." He pulled a folder from his coat, slid it across the table. Inside were documents, contracts, emails, legal filings. All of them had my name on them. "What is this?" I whispered. "This," August said, "is what they've been doing while you worked yourself into the ground at Helio Quarry Brands. They've been quietly erasing your claim to the Covington estate, forging documents, rewriting wills, paying off judges." I stared at the papers, my vision blurring. "Who's doing this?" "Your uncles, my sons." His voice turned to stone. After your mother left, they saw an opportunity. They convinced the board she was unstable. They had her declared legally estranged, and when she died, they made sure you'd never know you had inheritance rights. I felt rage rising in my chest like fire. So they just stole it? They tried, but your mother was smarter than they thought. Before she died, she left a trail, coded messages, hidden accounts, legal traps they don't even know exist yet. He leaned forward, and she left them all to you. I couldn't breathe. Why now? Why find me now? His eyes softened, just barely. Because 3 months ago, one of your uncles found out you existed. He hired investigators. They tracked you to Boston, and when they saw you working at Helio Quarry, one of our subsidiaries, they panicked. My blood went cold. That's why I got promoted, I whispered. August nodded. They wanted you close, controllable, distracted. He stood. But now you know the truth, and now, Zoe Covington, we take everything back. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in a room bigger than my entire Boston apartment, staring at the documents August had given me. Every page was a knife, every signature a betrayal. My uncles, men I'd never met, had systematically erased my mother from the family tree. They'd forged her signature on disclaimers, bribed estate lawyers, buried trust funds under shell companies. And the worst part? They'd used my job at Helio Quarry to monitor me. Every email I sent, every report I filed, every late night I stayed in the office thinking I was building a career, I was actually feeding them intelligence. They were watching me burn out, waiting for me to break. I felt sick. At dawn, August knocked on my door. "Get dressed," he said. "We're going to the city." "Which city?" "New York. The board meets today, and you're going to walk in and introduce yourself." My heart slammed into my ribs. "I can't just—" "You can, and you will." His tone left no room for argument. "They think you're weak. They think you're nobody. Let's show them how wrong they are." 2 hours later, I was in a tailored suit I didn't recognize, sitting in a black SUV cutting through Manhattan traffic. August handed me a leather portfolio. "These are your talking points. Memorize them. When you walk into that boardroom, you don't apologize, you don't hesitate. You state your claim and you remind them that Covington blood doesn't beg." I looked at him. "What if they don't believe me?" He smiled. It wasn't warm. "Then we release the files your mother left behind, and their careers end before lunch." The Covington building was a glass tower in Midtown, 53 floors of steel and power. We walked through the lobby like we owned it, because apparently we did. Security didn't stop us. Assistants moved out of the way. By the time we reached the executive floor, I realized something. These people were terrified of August. The boardroom was exactly what I expected. Long table, leather chairs, men in expensive suits pretending to look busy. And at the head of the table sat 2 men who looked like older, crueler versions of August, my uncles, Richard and Thomas Covington. They looked up when we entered, and I watched their faces drain of color. Richard said slowly, "What is this?" "This," August said, gesturing to me, "is Zoe Covington, daughter of Elena Covington, granddaughter of myself and the late Margaret Covington, sole surviving heir to the Elena Trust." The room went silent. Thomas stood. "That trust was dissolved." "Illegally," I said. My voice cut through the room like glass. I stepped forward, slid the portfolio onto the table. "I have the original documents, signed by my mother, witnessed by 3 independent attorneys and notarized 2 weeks before her death." Richard's eyes narrowed. "You have no idea what you're doing." "I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm reclaiming what you stole." Thomas slammed his hand on the table. "You think you can just walk in here and—" "Yes," August said coldly. "She can, because unlike you, she's legitimate." The air in the room shifted. I felt power for the first time in my life. Not the fake power of a corporate title, real power. The kind that makes men like my uncles sweat. And I was just getting started. Richard recovered first. He always did, according to August. He was the calculating one, the strategist. He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled, studying me like I was a stock he was deciding whether to short. "Let's say, hypothetically, you are who you claim to be," he said smoothly. "You're still nobody. No board experience, no business acumen, no relationships in this industry." He smiled. "You're a risk analyst at a mid-tier firm. What exactly do you think you bring to this table?" I felt the eyes of every board member on me. This was the test. August had warned me. They'll try to make you feel small. Don't let them. I met Richard's gaze. "I bring accountability," I said. "Something this board hasn't seen in 20 years. The room tensed. "I spent 3 months at Helio Quarry Brands analyzing subsidiary performance," I continued, "and I noticed something interesting. Helio Quarry's profit margins have been declining for 6 consecutive quarters, but executive compensation? Up 32%. Thomas shifted uncomfortably. "That's standard industry. It's embezzlement," I said flatly, "dressed up as performance bonuses." I pulled another document from my portfolio, slid it across the table. "I also noticed that Helio Quarry has been funneling contracts to a consulting firm called Apex Advisory Group, $50 million over 2 years, for services that were never rendered." Richard's jaw tightened. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Apex Advisory is a shell company, registered in Delaware, owned by a trust controlled by Thomas Covington." The room exploded. Board members started whispering. Phones came out. Legal counsel leaned over to Thomas, speaking urgently. I kept my voice steady. "My mother left me more than just inheritance documents. She left me a roadmap. She knew exactly what you were doing, and she made sure I'd have the proof." August stepped forward. "The question isn't whether Zoe belongs here," he said coldly. "The question is whether you do." Richard stood abruptly. "This is absurd. We're not going to sit here and be accused." "Then leave," I said. Everyone froze. I looked directly at Richard. "You've spent 2 decades convincing everyone my mother was a disgrace, that she abandoned her responsibilities, that she was unstable." I stepped closer. "But the truth is, she left because she saw what you were turning this family into, a machine that devours people, and she refused to let you devour her daughter." My voice cracked just slightly. "But she's gone now, and I'm here, and I'm not afraid of you." Richard's face turned red. "You have no idea what you've just started." "Good," I said, "because I'm not stopping until I've finished it." August placed a hand on my shoulder. "The board will vote next week," he announced, "on whether to reinstate Zoe Covington as a voting member and beneficiary of the family estate. In the meantime, all financial transactions above $5 million will require her approval." Thomas shot to his feet. "You can't." "I can," August said. "I still control 43% of voting shares. And as of this morning, Zoe controls another 18% through the Elena Trust." The room went silent. I watched the realization spread across my uncles' faces. Together, August and I had majority control. We'd just taken over the family. Richard's voice dropped to a whisper. "You'll regret this." I smiled. "No, you will." And I walked out of that boardroom knowing one thing for certain. This war was just beginning. The first threat arrived the next morning. A plain envelope, no return address, delivered to the compound by courier. Inside was a single photograph. Me, leaving my Boston apartment 3 weeks ago, coffee in hand, unaware. On the back, someone had written, We know where you sleep. August barely blinked when I showed him. Expected, he said. Richard doesn't negotiate. He eliminates. That's supposed to make me feel better? No, it's supposed to make you sharper. He slid a phone across the table. New, encrypted. From now on, you don't go anywhere without security. You don't use your old accounts. You don't contact anyone from your old life. I felt the walls closing in. So I'm just trapped here? You're protected here, August corrected. There's a difference. I wanted to argue, but I'd seen the look in Richard's eyes. He didn't just want me gone. He wanted me erased. That afternoon, August's head of security, a woman named Calloway, gave me a crash course in operational awareness. How to check for tails, how to vary routines, how to identify surveillance. You're a target now, she said bluntly. Act like it. By the end of the week, I'd moved into a secure apartment in Tribeca, high floor, bulletproof windows, facial recognition at every entrance. It felt like a gilded cage, but I didn't have time to feel sorry for myself, because August had a plan. We're not just defending, he said during our next meeting. We're attacking. He spread a series of files across the war room table. Richard and Thomas have been consolidating power for years, buying out smaller shareholders, installing loyalists on the board, but they've been sloppy. He tapped one file. This is Marcus Chen, a board member who's been voting with Richard for a decade, but 3 years ago, Richard forced him to sell a subsidiary at a loss. Marcus lost $12 million. So he has a grudge, I said. He has leverage, August corrected. If we offer him protection and a better deal, he flips. He tapped another file. This is Diane Mercer. She's been CFO for 8 years. She's brilliant, but Richard's been undermining her, setting her up to take the fall for the Apex advisory scandal. I saw where this was going. We offer her immunity. August smiled. You learn fast. Over the next 2 weeks, I became a strategist. I studied every board member, every subsidiary, every financial thread that tied the Covington empire together. And I started to see the cracks. Richard and Thomas had built their power on fear and favors. But fear only works if people believe you're untouchable. We were about to prove they weren't. Marcus Chen flipped first. August arranged a private meeting. I sat across from Marcus in a downtown restaurant, armed with documents and a simple pitch. Help us remove Richard, and we'll restore the value he stole from you. Marcus studied me for a long time. You're really Elena's daughter, aren't you? Yes. He nodded slowly. She was the only one who ever stood up to them. I always wondered what happened to her. She died protecting me. Now I'm finishing what she started. Marcus extended his hand. You have my vote. 1 down. Diane Mercer took more convincing. She was cautious, calculating. She'd survived years in the Covington machine by staying neutral. But when I showed her the paper trail, the documents proving Richard planned to make her the scapegoat, her eyes went cold. What do you need from me? She asked. Everything, I said. Every file, every email, every dirty deal Richard's ever made. She smiled. Done. 2 down. The board vote was in 3 days, and for the first time, I believed we could win. Richard didn't wait for the vote. 2 nights before the board meeting, the attacks began. Not physical. Richard was too smart for that. Financial. I woke up to a call from Calloway. They've frozen your accounts, she said. All of them. I sat up, heart pounding. How? Emergency injunction. Richard filed a lawsuit claiming you forged the Elena Trust documents. A judge issued a temporary freeze until the case is reviewed. I felt panic rising. Can they do that? They just did. August was already in the war room when I arrived, phone pressed to his ear, barking orders at attorneys. When he hung up, his expression was granite. They're trying to bleed you out before the vote, he said. No access to money means no ability to fight. It's a classic pressure tactic. So what do? We accelerate. He pulled up a screen.
Richard's lawsuit is built on one claim, that your mother's signature on the trust documents was forged. If we can prove it's legitimate, the injunction collapses. How do we prove that? August's eyes gleamed. Your mother didn't just sign those documents. She recorded a video, a testimony, explaining everything. My breath caught. You have a video of her? She left it with her attorney, sealed instructions, only to be opened if someone challenged your claim. He handed me a USB drive. This is her voice from the grave, and tomorrow we're playing it in court. That night I watched the video. My mother appeared on screen, younger but already exhausted. She was sitting in a lawyer's office, hands folded, looking directly into the camera. My name is Elena Covington, and if you're watching this, it means my family has tried to erase my daughter. Her voice was steady, but I could hear the pain underneath. I left the Covington family because I refused to be part of their corruption. I married a man they didn't approve of, I had a daughter they didn't want, and I knew that one day they would try to take everything from her. She leaned forward. So I'm leaving this testimony as proof that I established the Elena Trust willingly, proof that my daughter is the rightful heir, and proof that my brothers, Richard and Thomas Covington, are not the men they pretend to be. She pulled out documents, holding them up to the camera. These are records of illegal transactions, bribery, fraud, embezzlement, everything they've done to build their power. Her eyes hardened. If they come for my daughter, release these, burn them to the ground. The video ended. I sat in silence, tears streaming down my face. She'd known. She'd known exactly what would happen, and she'd prepared for it. The next morning, we walked into court. Richard's legal team was a wall of expensive suits and condescending smiles. They thought they'd already won. But when our attorney played Elena's video, I watched their confidence shatter. The judge went silent. The courtroom went silent. My mother's voice filled the room, calm and undeniable. When it ended, the judge looked at Richard. "Do you have any response to this testimony?" Richard's attorney stammered. "Your Honor, this video is admissible and compelling." He banged his gavel. "Injunction lifted. The Elena Trust is reinstated. Case dismissed." I exhaled for the first time in 24 hours. Outside the courthouse, Richard was waiting. He didn't say anything. He just looked at me with pure hatred, and I looked back. "One day down," I said quietly. "The rest of your empire is next." He turned and walked away, but I knew this wasn't over. The real battle was still coming.
The board vote was a massacre. Not for us, for them. I walked into that boardroom with August on one side and Diane Mercer on the other. Marcus Chen was already seated, looking calm. 3 other board members, people August had quietly secured, nodded as we entered. Richard and Thomas sat at the far end, surrounded by their loyalists, but I could see it in their faces. They knew they were outnumbered. The vote was called. All in favor of reinstating Zoe Covington as a full member of the Covington Family Board and restoring her rights under the Elena Trust? Hands went up. Marcus, Diane, August, 3 others. 7 votes. All opposed? Richard, Thomas, 4 loyalists. 6 votes. The chairman banged his gavel. Motion passes. Miss Covington is hereby reinstated. I felt the weight of the moment settle on my shoulders. I was in. But Richard wasn't done. He stood slowly, every movement calculated. "Congratulations, Zoe," he said, voice dripping with false warmth. "You've won your seat, but a seat means nothing without power." He gestured to the room. "You're 1 vote out of 17. You have no operational experience, no alliances beyond the few people my father has bribed into supporting you." He leaned forward. "Enjoy your victory. It'll be the last one you ever have." I stood. Every eye turned to me. "You're right about one thing," I said. "I don't have experience. I haven't spent decades learning how to rig contracts and embezzle funds." I let that land. "But I have something you don't." "And what's that?" Richard sneered. The truth. I nodded to Diane. She stood and pulled up a presentation on the screen behind her. For the past 2 weeks, Diane began, I've been conducting an internal audit at Miss Tevington's request. The room tensed. What I found was a systematic pattern of financial irregularities, ghost employees, inflated vendor contracts, offshore accounts. She clicked to the next slide, and all of it traces back to 2 executives. Richard and Thomas's faces went white. This is absurd, Thomas started. This is evidence, Diane cut him off, and it's already been submitted to the SEC. The room erupted. Board members were shouting, phones were out, attorneys were scrambling. August stood, voice cutting through the chaos. Effective immediately, Richard and Thomas Covington are suspended from all executive duties pending investigation. Richard slammed his hand on the table. You can't do this. I just did, August said coldly. Security entered the room. I watched my uncles, men who'd spent their entire lives wielding power, get escorted out like criminals. Richard stopped at the door, turned back to me. This isn't over, he hissed. Yes, I said quietly. It is. The door closed. Silence fell. And then, slowly, the remaining board members turned to me. What now? Someone asked. I looked at August. He nodded. This was my moment. Now, I said, we rebuild, we end the corruption, we restore integrity to this company, and we make sure that no one ever has to fight this hard to claim what's rightfully theirs. I paused. My mother died believing this family was broken beyond repair. I'm going to prove her wrong. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Marcus started clapping. Diane joined. One by one, the entire board stood and applauded. I felt tears prick my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. Not yet. I had work to do. That night, back at the compound, August poured 2 glasses of whiskey. To Elena, he said quietly. To Mom, I echoed. We drank in silence. She'd be proud of you, he said finally. I looked at him. Did you ever tell her that when she was alive? His face crumpled just for a second. No, he admitted, and that's a regret I'll carry forever. I put my hand on his. Then let's make sure her daughter doesn't have to. The next morning, the news broke. Covington executives suspended amid fraud investigation. Every major outlet picked it up. My phone, my new encrypted phone, blew up with messages from journalists, former colleagues, people I hadn't spoken to in years. Everyone wanted a comment. I gave none. August had taught me, control the narrative by controlling your silence. But Richard didn't stay silent. By noon, he'd released a statement. These allegations are a coordinated attack by a disgraced family member seeking to manipulate her way into an inheritance she has no legitimate claim to. The truth will prevail. I read it and laughed. He's panicking, August said. Good. But Diane was more cautious. He's also dangerous, she warned. Cornered animals fight dirty. She was right. That evening, a journalist published a hit piece. Who is Zoe Covington, the mysterious woman trying to dismantle a business empire? The article painted me as an opportunist, a gold digger, someone who'd fabricated documents and manipulated an elderly man to steal a fortune. They dug up my past, my college loans, my mediocre performance reviews at HelioQuery, an ex-boyfriend who claimed I was obsessed with status. It was character assassination, and it was working. Social media lit up. Half the internet thought I was a hero, the other half thought I was a scammer. I felt myself unraveling. They're trying to break you, August said when I showed him the article. It's working. No, he said firmly, it's a distraction. They want you focused on defending yourself instead of attacking them. He leaned forward. So don't defend, attack harder. I looked at him. How? He smiled.
We go public, your way. The next day, I did something I never thought I'd do. I held a press conference, not through the Covington PR team, just me, standing in front of cameras, telling my story. My name is Zoe Covington, and 3 weeks ago, I didn't know that name belonged to me. I told them everything. My mother's exile, her death, the years I spent thinking I was nobody, the resume in the diner, the helicopter, the grandfather I never knew. I told them about the forged documents, the frozen accounts, the men who tried to erase me. And I told them why I was fighting. This isn't about money, I said. It's about truth. It's about a woman who was punished for loving the wrong person. It's about a system that protects powerful men and crushes everyone else. My voice shook, but I didn't stop. My mother couldn't fight them, but I can, and I will. The room was silent when I finished. Then the question started. Do you think your uncles will face criminal charges? That's up to the SEC and the DOJ, but I believe justice will be served. What do you say to people who think you're just after the money? I looked directly into the camera. I say, watch what I do with it. The press conference went viral. Within hours, I was trending. Hashtag Zoe Covington. Hashtag Justice for Elena. Hashtag Covington Scandal. Public opinion shifted. People started digging into Richard and Thomas's histories. Old lawsuits resurfaced. Former employees came forward with stories of abuse and retaliation. The empire was crumbling, and I was standing in the center of it, holding the match. That night, August pulled me aside. You did well today, he said. I was terrified. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. He paused. But there's something you need to know. His tone made my stomach drop. What? Richard hired someone, a fixer, the kind of person who makes problems disappear. I went cold. What kind of problems? August met my eyes. The permanent kind. I felt the air leave my lungs. He's going to kill me? He's going to try. I didn't sleep that night. Calloway tripled security, armed guards outside my door, bulletproof glass, surveillance on every entrance. But none of it made me feel safe. Because Richard wasn't just coming for me. He was coming for everyone I loved. The next morning, I got a call. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Zoe Covington? A woman's voice asked. Who is this? My name is Dr. Sarah Hendricks. I was your mother's therapist, and I need to speak with you, immediately. My heart stopped. My mother had a therapist? For 3 years before she died, and she left something for you. We met in a coffee shop in Brooklyn, public, neutral. Dr. Hendricks was in her 60s, gray hair pulled back, eyes sharp and kind. She slid an envelope across the table. She gave this to me 2 weeks before she passed. She said if anyone ever came asking about her daughter, I should give it to you. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a letter. My dearest Zoe, if you're reading this, it means you've found your way back to the family I tried to protect you from. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you the truth while I was alive. I was afraid. Afraid they'd find you. Afraid they'd hurt you the way they hurt me. But you're stronger than I ever was, and you deserve to know everything. The Covington family isn't just corrupt, it's dangerous. My brothers didn't just steal money, they destroyed lives. There are people who disappeared, whistleblowers who were silenced, crimes that were buried. I tried to expose them once. They threatened to take you from me, so I ran. But I kept records, evidence, names. It's all hidden in a safe deposit box at Citibank, Midtown branch, box 4712. The key is in the lining of my jewelry box, the one I always kept on my dresser. Use it. Finish what I couldn't. I love you. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you better, but now you protect yourself. Mom. I couldn't breathe. Dr. Hendricks reached across the table, squeezed my hand. She was terrified, she said quietly, but she was also proud. She talked about you constantly, how smart you were, how determined. Tears streamed down my face. I didn't even get to say goodbye. She knew you'd survive, and she knew you'd fight. I wiped my eyes. Thank you. I called August immediately. We need to get to that safe deposit box, now. 2 hours later, we were at Citibank. The manager verified my identity. August handed over the key, recovered from my mother's belongings. The box was pulled from the vault. Inside was a thick folder and a USB drive. August and I sat in the back of the SUV, reviewing the contents. What we found was worse than I imagined. Documents detailing bribes paid to government officials, photos of Richard meeting with known criminals, financial records showing offshore accounts used to fund illegal operations, and a list, names of people who'd crossed the Covingtons. Next to some names, resolved. What does resolved mean? I whispered. August's face was grim. It means they're dead. I felt bile rise in my throat. We need to take this to the FBI. No, August said. Not yet. Why not? He looked at me. Because if we release this now, Richard will know we have it, and he'll destroy the evidence before we can use it. So what do we do? August's eyes were cold. We set a trap. The trap was simple. We leaked a fake document, a memo supposedly from my mother's files claiming there was a second safe deposit box containing even more damaging evidence. We planted it where we knew Richard's people would find it, and then we waited. It took less than 12 hours. Calloway called me at 3 a.m. They took the bait. 3 men just broke into a Citibank branch in Queens. The fake box? Exactly. Police are on the way. I felt a grim satisfaction, but August's expression was tense. This buys us time, but Richard's smart. When he realizes it's a trap, he'll come at us harder. Then we hit him first, I said. With what? I pulled up the list from my mother's files. These names, if even half of them are real, we have enough to bury him. August studied the list. We'll need verification, witnesses, proof of what happened to these people. Then let's find it. We spent the next week tracking down every name on that list. Some were dead, some had disappeared, but a few were still alive, and they were willing to talk. Marcus Chen connected us with a former Covington executive named Paul Derrick. Paul had been VP of operations until he discovered Richard was using company funds to pay off a manslaughter charge. When Paul threatened to go to the police, he was forced out, his reputation destroyed, his career ended. I lost everything, Paul told us, voice shaking. My job, my marriage, my credibility. Will you testify? I asked. He looked at me for a long moment. If it means taking him down? Yes. We found others. A journalist who'd been investigating the Covingtons until her sources mysteriously recanted, a contractor who'd been threatened after refusing to falsify safety reports, a former assistant who'd seen Richard forge documents. One by one, they agreed to go on record. We compiled everything into a single file: evidence, testimony, documents, and we sent it to the FBI. Within 48 hours, federal agents raided Covington headquarters. They seized computers, files, hard drives. Richard and Thomas were brought in for questioning. The media went insane. FBI investigates Covington Empire. Fraud, bribery, and possible homicide inside the Covington scandal. I watched it all unfold from the war room, surrounded by monitors. August stood beside me, silent. Is it over? I asked. Not yet, he said, but it's close. That night I got a call from an unknown number.
Against my better judgment, I answered, "You've made a terrible mistake," Richard's voice hissed. My blood went cold. "Where are you?" "Somewhere they'll never find me, but don't worry, Zoe, I'll find you." The line went dead. I told August immediately. He's running, which means he's desperate. And dangerous. Yes. Calloway organized a manhunt. Federal agents, private security, everyone was looking for Richard. He was planning. 1 week after his disappearance, I got a message. A photo. Of the compound. My apartment. The war room. And a single line of text. "You took everything from me. Now I take everything from you." I showed August. His face went pale. He's inside. Before I could react, the lights went out, and I heard footsteps coming closer.
The next 60 seconds were chaos. Gunfire, shouting, Calloway's voice screaming orders. I hit the floor, heart slamming against my ribs. Someone grabbed my arm, August, pulling me toward an exit. We ran. Behind us, I heard footsteps, heavy, deliberate. Richard. We made it to a secure room, steel door, reinforced walls. Calloway sealed us inside. "He can't get in here," she said, weapon drawn. But I heard his voice outside. "You can't hide forever, Zoe." August looked at me. "We end this, now." He pulled out his phone, made a call. "Release everything," he said. "Every file, every name, every crime. Send it to every news outlet in the country." He hung up. Within minutes, the story exploded. My mother's files, the evidence, the testimonies, everything went public, and the world saw Richard Covington for what he was, a criminal. Federal agents stormed the compound. Richard was arrested trying to escape through a service tunnel. I watched through the security monitors as they dragged him out in handcuffs. He looked up at the camera, at me, and I looked back. "It's over," I whispered. August put his arm around me. "No," he said gently, "it's just beginning." 3 months later, I stood in front of the Covington building, watching as workers removed the old signage. The company had been restructured, new leadership, new values. My mother's name was on the lobby wall now, the Elena Covington Foundation for Corporate Ethics. I placed my hand on the plaque. "We did it, Mom," I whispered. Behind me, August cleared his throat. "Ready?" I turned. Ready. We walked inside together, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. If you made it this far, drop a comment telling me what you would have done if you were Zoe. And if you want to hear more stories like this, family secrets, revenge, justice, subscribe and hit the bell, because trust me, this is just the beginning.